What would be a piece of advice you'd give, a high school player if he just came up to you and said, "Hey man, I want to reach the level you're at." What would be something you tell them that, besides the, hey, just get better, play more, try to develop your skill type thing that you think that could really benefit those guys that are trying to reach where you are right now?
Yeah, I would tell them that.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Five Tool Baseball Podcast. We're up to 15 of these bad boys. I'm Dustin McComas, Senior Editor of Five Tool Baseball, joined once again by Drew Bishop, Scouting Director for Five Tool Baseball. And we've got another guest today, one that we're very excited about, one that we know well. And we're veering away from the coaching rank and going to the player rank. Bryce Elder, who was the minor league pitcher of the year in the Atlanta Braves organization this year, former University of Texas ace. Before that, he pitched at Decatur High School, multi-sport athlete. We talk a lot about different paths you can take in baseball to reach the levels you want to reach to, which for many high school players is a professional level, the D1 level, or even the junior college level, whatever it is, just trying to continue their career playing the game. And Bryce is always the guy we think of just because of his unique path. Going back to his time as a standout golf player at Decatur, played some basketball, really shifted his focus in his high school career to being a high-level baseball player, ends up in a roundabout, unique way at the University of Texas, up and down freshman year, ends up being a Friday night ace before he leaves, and had just an incredible rise through the minor league levels for the Braves this year, going from high A to AAA in one season and doing it at a high level. So really excited to have Bryce on the show today.
Yeah, I think, Bryce will be able to touch on a handful of things that we've been trying to stress over the last couple of weeks. The ability to not panic in the recruiting process and wait for the offer that you really want. Being a dual sport or multi-sport athlete and the lessons that you learn from different sports along the way. And then, just working hard and experiencing the ups and downs of being a Division I player and coming through that, and then going to the next level and just cruising through the minor leagues so far. So, he's a good example of a lot of different things that we've been talking about. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say about those things.
Yeah. And, to put it in perspective, I mean, this guy started the year in high A, and it was his first professional game because, he was drafted during the pandemic. They didn't have minor league baseball during the shortened 2020 season. He's starting for high, their first high A game of the year. He's their opening day starter, and he ends the year in AAA, and he has a 2.75 ERA across all those levels. I mean, this is the type of thing we really don't see happen often at all for a guy, especially in his first professional season, let alone any professional season at the minor league level. So, as you said, Drew, he's taken a really unique path. Just a great example of a lot of different things that we talk about, but certainly, and maybe the most timely one right now is not necessarily. It's hard not to panic, but this is a guy that signed on with Texas. What was it, Drew? After his senior year ended in high school, I mean, it kind of it was off like a family trip. I mean, it was really late in the process.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was after the draft in late June or July of his senior year of high school. So, it's not easy. We say it like it might be easy, but it's not something that a lot of kids are able to do. But our hope is that you can hear from someone like Bryce and understand that it is okay to wait, and it can be beneficial to wait for that offer that you really want or think you're worthy of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, it's something that I think kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes with all these commitments is you got to find the fit you want. You don't have to necessarily settle right now. So yeah, and I'm thinking back to his recruitment. I think that he said that, Texas coach basically saw like an inning or two in an all-star game. And that kind of started the process. It just goes to show you that sometimes, we talk about these college coaches how they have to cram evaluations into a short calendar. They might only get to see you for a couple of innings, but hey, if those couple of innings are really interesting and kind of match up to what people are saying about you, it can certainly help you as well. So enough of us. Let's get to our interview with Bryce Elder, former University of Texas standout and current pitcher in the Atlanta Braves organization. Shifting gears guest-wise, we're moving away from the coaching ranks to the player ranks, and we've got a good one today. Former University of Texas Friday night ace, this year's Atlanta Braves minor league pitcher of the year, Bryce Elder, joining the Five Tooled Baseball podcast. Bryce, first off, what's it like to watch the World Series with a different interest level that Drew and I can't speak to? I mean, your organization is in there in the World Series right now. What's it been like to watch those guys go through the playoffs and compete at the highest level?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, they're hot right now. I think they're going to be hard to beat. I know a lot of Astros fans around. It's going to be a good series. Some of the guys I played with in AAA, so I know them. So rooting those guys on, it's been a lot of fun. And the next 4 or 5 games are going to be even more fun, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of AAA, I mean, you had an incredible season. You're basically your first professional season. I know you were drafted the year before, but with the pandemic and everything like that, this was really your first taste of professional baseball. What was it like, and what allowed you to just have that huge rise through being a guy that anchored the rotation at the high A level from the jump to ending your season in AAA?
Kind of going into it, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I had all the stuff I learned at Texas and throughout my career, just kind of routines and everything that I knew I was going to stick to. The first start I made in high A actually was the worst start I made all year. I talked to Tulo down at Texas, and he said, "Hey, man, obviously it's no big deal. Just put your head down and work hard every day, and you're going to look up in a few months, and you're going to have gotten a lot better, and you'll kind of be like, dang, I made it. I made it this far." And kind of exactly what I did. I just put my head down and worked every day with intent, and ended up in AAA at the end of the year, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, Bryce, we've been talking the last couple episodes on our show about the recruiting process and trying to stress to kids that, don't be in a hurry with this thing, because if you're not past your senior year, you have time. And a lot of times after the draft and after you go through your season, colleges look around and they have some money, or they have some guys leave and money becomes available. So there's opportunities, but you're kind of the poster child for what we're preaching to these kids about waiting. If it's, in our opinion, if you're not sitting there with your dream school offering and you think that you are better than the current round or level of offers you have, it's okay to wait. And if it's not your dream school, you can be picky. So, talk a little bit about that, going through your senior year, not being committed to a D1. I know you were committed to Howard for parts of it, but, what was it like, and how were you able to keep from, rushing to a decision?
So my thought process through it all, it was the same process I had when I played golf in high school, when I wanted to play in college. And it's still true to this day in anything. If you're good enough, they're going to find you. It doesn't matter when it is, whether it's in summer ball, whether it's in college baseball, or even in pro baseball. If you're good enough, they're going to find you. And I felt my senior year that I was good enough to play at a top program. So I committed to Howard that fall of my senior year. And I didn't commit to Howard even until I think late January, early February. I wanted to go somewhere bigger, and that's why I went to a JUCO. I was always worried I was going to go to a school that wasn't my dream school, or that I really didn't want to go to just because it was a D1, and then be miserable because I just chose to go to a D1, And so I was going to go to Howard, try to get better, and eventually end up at Texas. And my senior year, I put together a pretty good run, having success, and I end up landing at Texas, and so it worked out.
Pretty good run. I think you threw multiple no-hitters that run. Let's not sell it short. That was quite the run through the playoffs that year.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and a fun fact too, I know when Sean saw you and, finally made the decision to pull the trigger, was that think you were pitching down in Houston at a 5-tool event. So fun fact for us. But, I remember the process. I remember it took us a little bit to get you on campus to go to get you on a visit because y'all went on a family cruise.
Yes, we were actually, I missed our senior trip because we were still in the playoffs. And so we had like 40 people from my hometown and all my friends go on a trip. Well, we were still in the playoffs. And so those cruises, they don't refund you. They just give you half off. We're going to go on one. So,
and if I remember correctly, you jumped off the ship and drove through Austin on the way home for your visit.
That is exactly right. From Galveston, stopped in Austin and then went back home.
Yeah,
that's certainly a memorable road trip for sure. You mentioned the golf background. One of the things that we've talked about on here is there are a lot of different ways to get better at baseball or to have an athletic path. I mean, there's the guys that just play baseball, but there's the multi-sport guys as well. I know you're a really, really good golf player, probably still are a fantastic golf player. I believe you played basketball as well. How do you think that helped you in your baseball development and just your general outlook athletically about, kind of what it takes from a mental mindset in the work element to make yourself a guy that was, like you said, at one point committed to a junior college, commits to Texas at the end, and ends up being a guy that's drafted in the, I believe, the 5th round and is now where you are with the Braves organization?
For me, golf helps so much, and it still helps. I understand that baseball and golf don't always kind of work together because the time of the year, and I was fortunate to be able to do both. But playing other sports to me is one of the most important things. If I wouldn't have had basketball, I wouldn't be where I'm at as far as just staying in shape, being athletic. And the basketball coach I had in high school was just awesome. Even though he was teaching me stuff about basketball, it taught me stuff about life and even baseball and how to be competitive and stuff like that. But I think playing sports is huge. That team aspect all year round, I think is very important. I think people get stuck in this rut of, I'm going to try to get really good at baseball, so I'm just going to do baseball. Well, when you're 16 or 17, you can do more things than just baseball. I think kids either get burnt out or they have the ability to do all of them. So why not? And that's kind of my thought process on it.
Yeah, I think we'd agree with that. Coach Pierce always loved having the multi-sport athletes. There's so many benefits to it. And, I think a lot of times, more often than not, the guys that have come in that have played nothing but baseball their whole life, I don't see that they're a whole lot further along or any more skilled than some of the guys that haven't played baseball all year round. And so, and I think, like you learned a bunch of lessons from other sports that you were able to apply when you got to Texas. And I think, so that's kind of the next thing we wanted to get to. Can you talk a little bit about what that first semester and first year was like for you going from Decatur to the University of Texas?
It was actually I had no idea what to expect. And I don't want to say it was scary, but there was that unknown. I was very, very uncomfortable. I went from pitching here in Decatur, knowing everybody, being very comfortable, to going down to Austin. I went from Decatur, that was a city of 7,000 people, to Austin with however many hundreds of thousands of people now. And so it was a very kind of a daunting thing. I didn't know what to expect. And I got down there and didn't know anybody, kind of got in the swing of things. And that fall, it was at school, I was kind of uncomfortable. At the baseball field, I was kind of uncomfortable. I wasn't in my element at the time. And kind of the same thing as I've always done, and this year I did too, is just kind of, I put my head down. I want to get better. And I wanted to work in a spot where I pitched every day in the spring or every so often in the spring. I didn't want to just be on the team. And so I put my head down and worked that fall, even though I was uncomfortable. And that me being uncomfortable really benefited me because it pushed me out of my comfort zone. I had to go talk to people to learn things, and I had to do things that in turn made me a better player.
Well, and I think we saw this, when I was in at Texas, that a lot of times the biggest mistake that incoming or kids or freshmen can make is not asking for help, because the reality is that a lot of programs, there are so many people involved that can really help you and have been through it and have seen it. And you can't be afraid to tell someone you don't understand, or that doesn't seem right, or, so you just got to be honest. And, the only way that you're going to keep from helping yourself is if people don't know, and a lot of times, kids are afraid to be that guy and say that they don't understand in a group, or be embarrassed to ask a question, but you shouldn't be, because like you said, that's the kind of stuff that can help you get along. Do you remember any specific instances of maybe a coach or an upperclassman kind of, just saying something simple to you that made all the sense in the world and really helped you get to that next step?
Off the top of my head, I don't know that I do. I think just kind of seeing the older guys, kind of the way they did things. I mean, it wasn't always like, my deal is you pay attention and watch everything. You're going to either learn from how somebody does something right or how somebody does something wrong. And I just kind of sat back and watched and kind of observed and realized, okay, here's how to do things. Here's how to not do things. And I kind of mixed those together, and that's what made me have success.
Looking back, we've talked so much about just trying to educate players and families as they kind of go through this recruiting process. Is there one thing that, kind of looking back, you're like, man, I wish I knew this earlier on in kind of my path, because you had such a unique path to where you got. Was there something that, you kind of look back like, man, if I would have known this, it kind of might have accelerated things a little bit, or maybe something that you think more players and parents should know about this process as they go through it?
As far as something to know, I'm not sure about that, but I would tell parents and kids out there, don't panic. Like I said, if you're good enough, they'll find you. And so go in, day out, go to school, go to practice, whatever, and just try to get better. That's really all you can control. I mean, if a team's full that you really want to go to, well, they're full, you can't control that. So try to control the things that each family, each kid can control, and don't panic. I'm a firm believer, where you're supposed to end up, you'll end up. So if that's one thing I had to tell people, it would be that right there.
Yeah. So, I think what a lot of people hopefully take away from this is that, and people that don't remember your career, like starting out as a freshman, you had a lot of ups and downs as a true freshman, and you were stuck in some pretty tough spots because the staff believed in you, but it wasn't always easy. And I remember, to me, when I felt like your career really took off is when you got that Friday night start, after I believe that was your first college start at OU. And, out of nowhere, Nolan didn't pitch Friday night, and you had to come in and start. And that game pretty much turned our season and possibly your career around. Can you talk a little bit about that? What does it take to get through those tough parts?
I mean, for me, that's one of the points that it kind of turned around. And another one is my freshman year, and I know you remember it, against A&M. I came in, I think it was the 7th inning. We were down by 1, I want to say. Get 2 outs, walk 2 people, and end up giving a hit that they scored 2 runs. And then we were down by 3. We ended up losing by 1. So there's certain situations throughout my career that I look back on, and I kind of say that's kind of the turning point, because you realize, or I realize at least, that in those situations that seem so big and so at the time, they're really not, and I go home and look at it, and it's just like, all I got to do is just make a good pitch. I mean, there's nothing crazy about that, other than there's a lot of people in the stands and all this other stuff that people hype it up to be. And I just try to make one pitch at a time and make it good. It doesn't matter if it's on a Tuesday night against a non-conference team, or it's on a Friday night against OU or A&M. It's the same thing. And you got to look at it that way. It's not always that easy. And I've been there, don't trust me.
Right.
But if you try to dumb it down as much as possible, I think that's what allowed me to be successful.
Yeah. And I think, some of the failures and outings that, weren't what you would hope or want going into them, I think those helped shape your career and just kind of turned you into being one of the most steady starting pitchers I can remember in my time at Texas. I mean, and I think obviously you went through your freshman year, had a lot of ups and downs, went and played summer ball in Santa Barbara for Coach Pentard and came back. And, from then on, you took that Friday night role and ran with it.
Yeah, I went out to Santa Barbara and Coach Pentard helped me a ton. Kind of the end of my freshman year was not how I wanted to finish. I didn't even throw. Actually, I didn't get to throw in any of the regional, super, or college series. But I mean, I didn't look at that as so much as a negative of like, oh, this makes me mad. It was just more like, I didn't get the job done. So I went out to California and really tried to get after it and learn stuff. And there, in summer ball, that's the time to mess with things, to try things. So I started trying different things, and I figured out certain things that really worked. And so once I figured those things out, it worked. I just tried to get really, really good at each of those things. And I came back that fall and had success. And that next year was pretty good.
Yeah, kind of speaking of that, I know something you really took a lot of pride in was your work ethic away from the competition between the lines. But as you got older in your baseball career, how much of it became more of you start to be able to control your own path? Like you mentioned, like the summer can be times to, hey, if I want to try a new grip, or I'm going to talk to this coach, and then the fall can be that time as well. And I'm sure that's something that's, as you've gotten into pro ball, you've kind of had more of those interactions as well. Like, as your career progressed, how much of that element became more important of, hey, you know what, I do have a lot of control over my own career if I put the work in.
So, I mean, I noticed that a lot this year. One way I kind of explained it is if there's bases loaded 3-2 and it's a tie ball game and I want to throw a change up, I can throw a change up. And whereas at Texas in a big game, you can do that, but I wouldn't do that there because it matters so much more. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying these games don't matter. It's just, that you're going to be up again in 5 days in the minor league. So I kind of took that on this year of like, let's not be stupid about it, but let's pay attention in spots where I can throw this change up or this curveball, when usually I would throw a sinker or slider to say. And it gets me out of my comfort zone, and I have to figure out how to make that pitch. So this year, that kind of right there has allowed me to grow as a pitcher.
Yeah, speaking of growth too, I think when you arrived at Texas, you're kind of a mid to upper 80s guy, threw a lot of kind of the slider cutters. By the time you left, I mean, you were comfortably sitting in the low to mid 90s, no problem, low effort. How much of that do you attribute to, strength and conditioning, nutrition, a lot of things that young players begin kind of learning about in their high school career and really become of big importance in college baseball as well?
So I think the biggest deal, and I'm not going to sit here and say about the nutrition. Drew knows my nutrition wasn't. I will say, I think some of it goes back to the multi-sports. I never was on a true baseball program. I was always playing basketball. I was always playing golf. And then I'd play baseballs at the end of my high school career in the summer. But before that, it was just straight golf. So I never got on a true baseball routine. When I got down to Austin, I started lifting specifically for baseball. I was only doing baseball. And so that allowed my body to prepare myself and get stronger in the areas that I needed. Whereas before I had never done that. So that first fall, I saw a tick up. That spring, I saw a little tick. And then the next fall and the next spring, I saw a little bit of one too. But I think it was just getting in that true baseball routine that I'd never been in high school because I played other sports. That's what allowed me to see a tick up in velocity.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like Dustin mentioned, you were able to settle into some of those routines and really take that Friday night role and run with it. What, like, as a freshman turning to your sophomore year, what things did you notice changing? I like from a leadership standpoint, from a pitching standpoint, what kind of things made that sophomore year, not easy, so to speak, but, a lot more comfortable for you?
I mean, the thing that sticks out is when you're always more comfortable when you have confidence. That's the first thing. And I realized that throwing that fall, I mean, which y'all know, I was still one of the younger guys on that team.
Right.
But when you're throwing well, you have confidence. People are more comfortable when you're out on the mound, when you have confidence and when you're throwing well. So everything like that kind of changed. But it wasn't until kind of later my sophomore year, which we were terrible, but later my sophomore year that people kind of started, I don't necessarily want to say listening to me, but kind of like watching what I was doing. And so I kind of realized that, which to me, I was never a big vocal leader, maybe a little bit more my junior year. But my sophomore year, I was just kind of doing my own thing. And if people wanted to watch what I was doing and asked, then I would talk to them about it. But as far as my sophomore year, that transition was different. I mean, I went from not really throwing that often to throwing every Friday night. But I liked that structure of it, and it allowed me to get my routine in the same every single week. So kind of the takeaways is just that routine was good. And when people started kind of watching and seeing what I was doing, it allowed me to help other people.
Yeah. And so when, you talk about your routine, let's say you start on a Friday, what is your routine from Saturday leading up to that next Friday night start?
So if I should remember it to a T, but so Saturday morning I get up, I go to the field and do like a kind of a full body flush, kind of with a weight vest on, kind of a lot of movement, do some running or walk on the treadmill. And then Sunday, or that day, I throw to 70 feet on Saturday. Sunday, I stretch it out a little more, do a true workout, leg workout. Monday, day off, I throw to about 120 foot, 110 feet. Tuesday, bullpen, long toss, bullpen lift day. Then Wednesday is kind of toning it back down, getting ready for that Friday. I'll go to about 100 foot. And then Thursday, I throw to 70 feet and throw 7 sinkers to somebody down in the catcher position and be ready to go for that Friday.
Yeah. So, obviously you get to pro ball, and like you said earlier, you're pitching every fifth day in the minor league ball. So
because the schedule was a little weird, but yes, it's shorter.
Gotcha. So what changes for you when you condense that time between starts?
So at the beginning of the year, I was kind of curious on how it was going to work. I had to kind of work some things out, but as the season went, I figured out I can still do the same things. I just have to shorten it and kind of modify that extra thing I may do just to not necessarily fill time, but I mean, I was getting something out of it, but because I had 7 days I could do it, I had to take the more important things and pack them into those 4 or 5 days in between starts to be ready to go.
Yeah. Was there a moment like okay, I'm in professional baseball now moment, like an at bat or a player you faced or something to where like, man, it's a little bit different up here than it was down in Austin when things might have been a little bit easier from the competition standpoint?
Yeah, yes and no. There was never a moment that I really was like, okay, now we're here. It's just the game gets faster at every level. I mean, in high, the guys were good, and then in double A, the guys were a little better, and the game was faster, and then in triple A, it was even faster, and the guys were better. And so, you'd notice it at every level, but I mean, I'm not out there fielding ground balls or hitting or anything. I guess I did hit. It's hard, but for me, I mean, it all is the same, I mean, yeah, I'm going to continue to get better, but at the same time, I'm trying to do the same thing no matter who I'm facing. So it's a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Did you feel like in college you had a lot more built-in structure, and in pro ball you had to be a little bit more self-motivating, or did you feel like there was not much of a change when it came to that?
There was a big change. We always had the 6 a.m. workouts and the workouts during the day, and then you had to go throw. And kind of in pro ball, I noticed very quickly, like that's where I could get an edge on guys, is because if you didn't want to show up to the field until the stretch, you could do that. But if you could show up earlier if you wanted, And so I realized a lot of guys do their work, but they just do what they have to do. And so without that extra structure, like at Texas, I felt that I could get an edge on people and do more things and get ahead and ultimately move up quicker.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's changed a lot in college baseball from your time to now is there's been the introduction of the NIL stuff. And if you were back at Texas right now, what kind of deals would you be looking for?
You're going to be living that country club life, huh?
Well, I don't know. I'd probably do golf stuff and hunting stuff. I'd probably say. But I
Any
mean,
food or anything? You mentioned nutrition with a smirk. It sounds like you got a couple of places in Austin that were getting you a few times.
1 in a million via 3.
Oh, there you go.
And Matt's El Rancho.
There you go. There you go. Now you're speaking our language.
Yeah, now you got us excited, hungry but excited.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think as we close this out, you talked about going through the process and being able to hold off and wait for that dream school that ultimately you were able to get that offer. Talk about something for like a takeaway for people that are that enabled you or helped you be able to do that. I know it's not easy because you play with guys that are committed elsewhere and already know where they're going, but you bet on yourself. So what was something that helped you be able to do that and just helped you through the process?
So the biggest deal was my family. My parents always were supporting me as far as what I wanted to do. They're always going to give suggestions, but they let me make the decision at the end of the day. And they knew I always wanted to go to Texas. I knew that. I had some other kind of people talking to me, bigger schools, but I knew I wanted to go to Texas. And so I ended up, like I said earlier, committing to the junior college because I wanted to end up at Texas. And for me, it wasn't always, like Drew said, it wasn't always easy. All these kids I'm playing on a team with are committed somewhere. All these kids are talking about going to do this and going to do this. And when they show up on campus, and I didn't have anywhere. I was committed to Howard, but as far as big school that I wanted to end up at. But the biggest deal for me is I've never been a really, really confident person, but I've always had a lot of belief in myself. And I think that right there was what got me there. Was I knew that I was good enough to pitch there, and I truly, deeply believed that. And I think if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't ended up there. But I believed that I was going to end up at the University of Texas, and I was good enough to pitch there, and it ended up working out that I got to go there.
Along those lines, because we got a lot of families and kids that kind of tune in. What would be a piece of advice you'd give, a high school player if he just came up to you and said, "Hey man, like, I want to reach the level you're at." What would be something you tell them that, besides the, hey, just get better, play more, try to develop your skill type thing that you think that could really benefit those guys that are trying to reach where you are right now?
Yeah, I would tell them that there's no secret. There's no way to do it other than the hard way. It's not going to be easy. You got to try to get better every single day. And I know I've said that 3 or 4 times on this, but it is what it is. There's no secret. There's no easy way to do it. There's no loophole in the system to get where I'm at right now. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. You're going to miss time hanging out with your friends or your girlfriend or your family even sometime, but it's worth it in the end if you really want to do it. So that's one thing I would tell them is there's not an easy way to do it. You got to do it the hard way. And if you do it that hard way, and you really want to do it that hard way, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, you're making it look a little easy right now, going from high A to AAA your first year. I got to think that the transportation probably changes a little bit as you go up the levels, right? Like things kind of change a little bit there, a little more incentive to pitch well.
That's very correct. We were in buses in Rome and then Mississippi, which Mississippi wasn't bad just because it was all kind of in the southeast. But when I got moved up to AAA, they said we get flight leaves Tuesday morning, be there by
music to your ears, getting on a flight for sure. I feel like I can't ask you questions without going back to, I feel like every time I talked to you at Texas, I was the guy that asked you about, pitch selection and things like that. So are you throwing the curveball more in pro ball?
So actually I did at the beginning of the year, and then I figured out that I'm going to use it. I'm going to continue to use it, but actually the last, I think it was 13 starts, I do it like 4 times.
Wow. Okay.
That if I made sinker really, really good, slider really, really good, and changeup really, really good, that I can use the curveball as a get me over or when I need to, because I still have feel for it. But the changeup, when I really started having success this year in Rome, I mean, my numbers were okay, but I kind of strung some together there at the end and got moved up. But the changeup in Mississippi, I remember the exact pitch when it clicked. And I've done it ever since. I threw some 3-2, just kind of like I was saying earlier, in the uncomfortable counts. I needed to throw those to grow as a pitcher, and I threw those pitches, and my changeup just clicked, and it's been there ever since. So those three right there were really, really good. And so I had three going to both sides of the plate as far as lefty and righty, and that's pretty tough as a hitter. So the curveball, yes, I will throw it more next year than I did this year, but this year I really dialed in on changeup, slider, and sinker, and just tried to be as good as possible with those three.
Yeah, well, clearly it works. I'm looking at your numbers. I mean, we've got 155 strikeouts across 137.2 innings, 1.10 WHIP. I mean, that's 2.75 ERA. Yeah, you're you made it look easy this year. And I'm sure it's got to help you that the sinker is kind of coming back to be in vogue again in baseball, it seems like.
Yes, that is helping out for sure. And throwing the big league balls in AAA, they move a lot more as far as sinkers and changeups. So a little different breaking ball wise, but sinkers, they do move more.
Yeah, got the flights and the better baseball. AAA is the place to be for sure. Well, Drew, you got anything to wrap us up with?
No, I don't think so. You know, Bryce, you know, I can speak to this having been with you for over 3 years at Texas. You know, you went through a lot, but you had that internal belief in yourself, and you just weren't going to be denied. And, you know, that was the attitude that set the tempo for the entire team. And that's ultimately what got us headed back in the right direction your junior year. And, you know, a guy like Ty Madden got to work with you. And I think you guys learned a lot from each other and pushed each other and just created that sense of competition within the team that really makes it fun. So, you know, I can't say enough about, you know, you as a kid. And, you know, I know the entire Longhorn Nation's excited to keep watching you pitch and be up top with the Braves next year.
That's the plan.
Yeah, see a little smile on your face. Yeah, you really did pass the torch, you know, from I know Ty, you know, that's something that he spoke about. You know, passing it on to those guys like Ty and Tristan, who I think are have passed it on in some ways to Pete Hansen, and some other those guys as well. But yeah, it was a blast to cover you. And I know when we think about recruiting and a lot of the things that we're passionate about and trying to just relay messages to families and players, you're a guy that always comes up because I think you're the best example I know of there are different paths to get to the highest level. You know, there are different ways to do it, but like you said, the one consistent aspect of that is the work. It is doing it the hard way, like you said. So there might be a lot of different paths, but they all involve that. And I think you're one of the best examples we can think of when we're discussing recruiting, of there being so many different ways to get to that point.
Absolutely. I agree.
Cool. Well, Bryce, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure to follow your career. It's a pleasure covering you. You know, I know Drew speaks so highly of you and had a closer interaction at Texas than I did, bugging you with some bad media questions, but really appreciate you taking out some time. It's been fun to watch you do your thing with the Braves, and I know we'll be following a career that's certainly knocking on the big league door. And if I believe I'm right, you've got a workout to get to soon, right?
I'm going to work out at 10:30. Yes, I am.
Oh, there you go. That's why he jumped from high A to AAA in his first professional season. Bryce Elder, thank you so much, man. Take care.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You have a good one.
Thanks again to Bryce Elder for joining us on today's episode of the 5-Tool Baseball Podcast, episode 15. Certainly one of my favorite guys that I covered during my time covering the Texas baseball program. And a main reason why, and it's, you know, a lot of what we talked about, he had just such a unique path, but also a guy that you could tell that the competitiveness, the approach, the way he was dedicated to his craft and to himself off the field as well, positively impacted his career. I mean, he was a guy that was a, you know, kind of a strike throwing mid to upper 80s slider cutter kind of a guy. And by the time he left, He's a low to mid 90s sinker, slider, changeup, occasional curveball pitcher at Texas that, resulted in being a 5th-round selection by the Atlanta Braves. Although we should note that he wasn't paid like a 5th-round selection. He was paid like more like a, late 2nd, early 3rd round kind of a pick. And here he is already in AAA. But, Drew, what are some things that kind of stuck with you with that conversation with Bryce?
Well, I think, part of the thing that makes him so good is just having that internal belief in himself. Mm-hmm. And you saw that as kind of a common theme throughout his progression through his career. He ultimately, that's what allowed him to not panic and wait until after his senior year to commit to Texas. And, he knew that was something that he thought he could do. And he waited and got it. I think he understood also through playing a bunch of different sports that, he could do that. And it just, all of that gave him confidence, and he was able to get through tough times at Texas because of that confidence. And now he really has an edge and knows how to go about his business and attack and just really gain an edge on people, whether it's something he's doing preparation wise off the field or on the mound.
Yeah. And I don't want people to take this for granted. Like I can't recall, and I'm not extremely well versed in, like, I know every minor league system. I mean, I do follow it semi closely, but I can't recall a guy that in what's basically his first professional season, because the pandemic, there was no minor league baseball. Going from, well, first off, starting out at high A, which even for a college pitcher is an aggressive place to start. Right. Starting out at high A and ending the season in AAA, and not just ending the season in AAA, ending the season in AAA throwing well for a team that I believe was competing in the postseason of their AAA playoffs, and to do that in your first professional season is incredible. And I think it goes back to a lot of the things he learned through golf, through playing different sports, through having to find his own way at Texas in terms of, having that up and down first season. He mentioned it. He didn't pitch in the postseason, for a team that ended up going to the College World Series, how he rebounded from that, going out to the California Collegiate League. Like, there are a lot of different things that went into his development. And again, I think that he's just one of the best examples of, you can take a very unique path. But as he said, if you're good, they're going to find you. But part of the reasons why they found him is because of that path, and because of that work he put in.
Right. And, as you from level to level, the playing field evens out as far as talent, because everyone has talent at the major D1 level. Everyone has talent in pro ball. But what has allowed him to move so quickly and be so successful is that makeup. And, for him, that means that internal confidence, the understanding of what he's trying to do, and the understanding of who he is. I think Bryce, as a person and as a player, has a really mature understanding of who he is and what his strengths and weaknesses are. And that just allows him to be comfortable and be himself in tough situations, whereas other people might not be able to handle those pressure situations as well if they don't really know what they're going to fall back on. And Bryce is elite when it comes to that. And I think, playing that individual sport of golf, I think he learned a lot of lessons from that. And it was good to hear him talk about all the lessons he learned from playing different sports, because I know you and I are both advocates of kids that play multiple sports because of the lessons that you learn both physically and mentally. All the sports are different, and you gain different skill sets, and coaches coach differently, and there's just different environments that you get to experience. And with that, comprehensive knowledge of, different surroundings and how to handle them, that can only make you better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you just learn how to compete and how to be a teammate in different arenas. And at the same time, using, different types of athleticism and different types of muscle. And he brought up a great point. It's something that we've talked about kind of as we were going through the 5 till 55 about, the guys. And look, if you just play baseball, cool. Like there are a ton of guys in the big leagues right now. Like that was their path. They were really good at a young age. They were really good in high school. They were really good in college or the minor league levels, and they're good as professionals. But that multi-sport element, he mentioned it with the weight program. Like I was never in a specific baseball weight program, and all of a sudden his velocity went from the mid to upper 80s occasionally, to the low 90s, to the low to mid 90s. And he's a pretty low effort guy on the mound. Like, he cruises through, starts, holds his stuff. But that specialized program really helped him take off. And it's one of the reasons why that, kind of scouts and college coaches and things like that. And when you see these guys that kind of have these unique athletic backgrounds, you can kind of project those guys a little bit more aggressively because they haven't had that specialized skill development, strength training, or whatever it is. And it also illustrates the importance of a specific strength and conditioning program for baseball at the collegiate level. It's one thing that we talked about, if you're a player and family going on a visit, ask about the strength program. Is it one guy running a bunch of different sports? Is it one guy with baseball and softball? Is baseball have its own separate strength and conditioning thing? Like when I was, for literally almost a minute at Louisiana Tech, like the strength and everybody did strength and conditioning in the same room, same weight room, or whatever it is, football, basketball, baseball, whatever. Like there wasn't as specialized of an element for that strength and conditioning program, which is one of the reasons why we mentioned, hey, it's something to ask about, because baseball players need to train like baseball players. And in the case of Bryce Elder, I mean, it made a huge difference in his stuff and his velocity, and just his physical strength and his athleticism on the mound.
Yeah. And I think another thing to highlight when it comes to that, everybody does have a different path and there's no magical way to get there. So that key factor, no matter what your path is the hard work. There's no shortcut, no matter how you want to go about it. And you can probably, have success at different levels, but it's not going to be sustained success that's going to carry you to where you ultimately want to go if you're taking shortcuts. And he mentioned it's a sacrifice. There are times that you're not going to be able to do fun things with your family or spend as much time with your friends or your girlfriend because you're doing that work. But ultimately, it's worth it in the end if you're willing to put in the time and the effort to get there.
Yeah. He mentioned, knowing that he could beat guys in certain areas by simply getting to the field ahead of him and working out more and doing different stuff beyond what was just simply required. That's something that he realized early on in college. It's something that he's realized in professional baseball as well. And that's just not something you can do for a week or a week here or a week there or whatever it is. It's got to be something you do consistently. One thing too, I think is noteworthy, maybe in an indirect way. We mentioned that he was committed to Howard for junior college, but he knew that, hey, I think that I am a major D1 prospect. That's who I think I am. I'm confident in that. Those are the opportunities I'm going to seek. But, and I don't mean this in any way as a slight to junior college baseball, because I went and covered the junior college event, the All-Star Weekend event at DBU, and literally I feel like every single day coming out of that event, a guy committed to a major D1 program. It just goes to show you that junior college baseball can be a fantastic opportunity for guys to bet on themselves. Like, hey, if that's your goal, you want to go play at Texas, and that's your school and that's your dream school, and you're already good enough to be a junior college player, that's a great avenue to go bet on yourself. We see it so many times with these guys that go to the junior college level that, Texas just scrimmage Sanjak, and, Harold Cole, the guy that led off the game for Sanjak, hit a bomb. I mean, Sanjak guy, well, he committed to Arkansas like almost immediately after that All-Star weekend. Like it's a great, we talk about paths and Bryce Elder's unique path. Like, who knows? I mean, his path might have included a 1-year stop at Howard and then to the University of Texas, but it can just be I think it was kind of an indirect example of, there are different ways to get there if you want to bet on yourself, and junior college baseball can be one of those avenues to get there.
Yeah. And like we talked about it with a different path, everyone's at a different stage of development when they graduate high school. And, one thing that Bryce mentioned that kind of reiterated that was in the minor leagues, he wasn't afraid to throw a 3-2 changeup because the goal there was to work on things. But he said at the same time, he wasn't going to throw that pitch in a big spot in a Friday night game at Texas sometimes because it, quote unquote, meant more. And that, like I said, that was part of his development, and he's continued to develop as he's gone up in minor league baseball. So, the idea that you have to go to a D1 out of high school doesn't really carry a lot of weight when, if you want to bet on yourself, going to junior college is a great way to bet on yourself. And it's a great way to develop. There's not all programs are equal, but there's a ton of junior college programs in Texas that are going to get you better. Yes. And get you to that ultimate spot, whether that's a major D1 or professional baseball. You have both of those options. And after 1 year only, which is different from a D1 guy that has to go and be 3 years at a Division I school unless they're sophomore eligible based on their birthday. But, there's so many ways to get there. And we try to highlight those. And I think Bryce is a great example of someone that handled everything the right way. He found an option that could help him get to the place that he wanted to get to ultimately. And then that place ultimately popped up before he went there and he was able to take it. But if he had signed with another Division I that, wasn't his dream school, he wouldn't have had that opportunity at that point.
Yeah, that's something he mentioned. You could tell that it would have been one of those guys that if you just would have committed to a D1 to go to a D1, but we always talk about the fit has got to be good both ways,
right?
Or else it just leads to not an enjoyable experience, which leads to not development, which leads to you're not getting closer to where you want to go. And especially in the state of Texas, there's so many good junior college programs. For sure. But now that he's not on here, do you have a favorite Bryce Elder story from being around him at Texas? I covered him and interviewed him a lot, but obviously I didn't have the access that you had. Is there one that sticks out for you? Got a smirk on your face. So I'm already proud of myself for asking this question, even though I don't know what the answer is.
Well, Bryce is a very curious kid, and he was one of the few guys that was willing to sit there and think about what you said and say, well, that doesn't make sense. Why? Why are we doing that? And he always wanted to know. And him and I would get into it a lot. And I remember one of the biggest ones was we were in study hall in Houston at our hotel, and he walks down into the study hall room without shoes and socks on. And I was like, buddy, number one, that's gross. Number two, that's just not how we do things. Go put shoes and socks on. And he just couldn't fathom why that was such a big deal. But it was funny. And he was hard-headed, and he liked to understand exactly why we were doing just about anything. And, as a staff member, it kind of challenges you because you're going to have an answer. Mm-hmm. And whereas the majority of the group just kind of shows up and, does what they're told and everything. But, it's funny because if you don't have a real answer, you're probably not going to get away with it with Bryce. And that's what, makes a team fun. And, Bryce he's really smart. He's very mature. He's very curious. And, that's part of what led him to being such a good player and such a good leader for our team, and you had to be on your toes and have answers for things. And, ultimately when you do, you can coexist. But if you were in a situation where you didn't have a good reason for something, you were probably going to get questioned pretty heavily by Mr. Elder.
That's probably a good pitching mindset to have. Okay, why do you want me to throw the slider like this? Why do you want it to break like this? Why are we throwing this in this kind of count? I can see from a pitching standpoint that could be something that could be beneficial, but probably the pitching coaches down in the minor league levels have kind of learned they're going to have to exercise some patience a little bit with Elder. Funny, like that's like almost the exact same way Shaka Smart described Jared Allen too, is a ultimate like why are we doing this kind of guy? And Jared Allen just signed a $100 million contract in the NBA. But well, thanks again so much to Bryce Elder for joining us again. Atlanta Braves minor league pitcher of the year in that system. Just a guy that it was really fun to watch him develop at Texas. But when we talk about, hey, there are different paths to take, and if you're uncommitted and you're anxious about it, we're not saying that you're going to be Bryce Elder and end up at Texas and get drafted in the 5th round and knock on the big league door almost right away. But we are saying that there are going to be opportunities that present themselves, and that if you're good, they're going to find you. And there are a lot of different paths to take in baseball and try to get to that end goal. And I think that he's one of the best, certainly one of the best examples of that. So thanks to Bryce for joining us on the show. But that wraps up episode 15 of the 5-Tool Baseball podcast. Again, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, just search 5-Tool Baseball podcast, on our Twitter accounts at Dustin L. McComas, at Drew H. Bishop, all the 5-Tool Twitter accounts, Instagram, Facebook. 5-Tool even has a TikTok account as well. So you can find us all over the place. Hit that follow button. And we hope that we can at least be a little bit educational for those young players and families that are kind of going through the recruiting process. And also those high school players, college players, that can kind of get something from Bryce about a guy that's living it right now, like what it takes to be a high level college player and then transition to professional baseball at the highest level. So a really good example for people listening out there. But for Drew Bishop, I'm Dustin McComas. Thank you again for listening to the 5-Tool Baseball podcast. And until we talk to y'all next time, take care.